Welcome to the web series, The Hero's Call, where champions of safety and justice in the community are profiled. The series is co-hosted by attorney Mark Diller and his colleague, Dr. John Naranja. Dr. John is both an attorney and a doctor.
Today, we are featuring Kerry Miller and Steve Clark of the Massachusetts Restaurant Association. Kerry and Steve have committed to help an entire industry survive and thrive in the midst of this crisis. Welcome to the Hero's Call. Thank you for joining us, Kerry and Steve.
Thanks for having us, Mark.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be here.
So, can you please share with us, what is the Massachusetts Restaurant Association, also known as the MRA?
So the Mass Restaurant Association is the Food and Beverage Trade Association for Massachusetts. We represent restaurants and food and beverage providers of all sizes, small employers, small locations with 2 and 3 employees, all the way up to the largest restaurant chains in Massachusetts. Our job is to protect the restaurant industry. When the COVID crisis hit, our mission became, we don't care if you're a member or a non-member. We just want to get as many restaurants as possible to the other side of this crisis. And so all of the services that we generally provided to members, we were providing to all restaurant operators across Massachusetts.
I read somewhere on the website that about 1/10 of the Massachusetts employees are either directly or indirectly related to the Massachusetts restaurant industry. Is that a correct figure?
So we have 300,000 employees in Massachusetts, and that's within the 4 walls of the restaurant. That doesn't even count any of the providers, any of the linen companies, the bakeries, the flour companies, the bread companies. All of our service providers are not included in that amount, but 300 employees, which makes up 10% of the Massachusetts workforce.
So you have about 15,000 plus restaurants, give or take, that are here in Massachusetts, and you're the MRA is the industry organization. How many employees do you have at the MRA? Let's start with pre-COVID. How many employees did you have at the MRA pre-COVID?
So we get a lot done with a little, and we've always been blessed by having surrounded ourselves with good folks. So pre-COVID, we had 10 employees at the association. Post-COVID, we found quickly after the 15th of March that our revenue streams, not unlike everybody else's, we're going to be heavily impacted by the fact that we couldn't with a good conscience collect dues from members that had just lost their revenue streams. So we had to furlough 60% of our staff. So we currently we moved to 4 employees for a good amount of time.
It's my understanding, gentlemen, that the restaurant industry was catastrophically impacted by the economic crisis. Is that your observations as well?
Absolutely. I'll share some numbers about impact. So back on March 16th, we were the first industry that was actually taken offline by the government. We had about 35 hours notice that we were being shut down. And our shutdown happened right before our busiest time that we normally have. You have St. Patrick's Day, you have March Madness, you have opening day with the Red Sox, you have April vacation for where there's increased dining, you have 2 playoff runs with the Celtics and Bruins, you have all the graduations and commencements that Massachusetts is so famous for, all happening in that time frame, and that all was lost. So it's been a very impactful loss that has happened. Put some numbers to it. We're approaching probably $5 billion in lost sales since March 16th, and we probably had to lay off upwards of 85% of our employees have been furloughed or temporarily laid off as this crisis began. And as you know, the restaurant industry is one of very slim margins and very high labor intensity. So it's certainly, we feel those impacts both from a macro level with the state impact, but also a micro level with individual conversations with operators.
You talked about these enormous impacts and the observations you've made in the restaurant community. and obviously MRA is what is, you know, you're a big advocate for the restaurant community. Can you give us some examples of some of the things that MRA is doing or has done during this COVID crisis to help out with the situation?
Absolutely. So right away, we recognized that we knew that a number of employees were going to have to be laid off. And Governor Baker actually said in his press conference, we're encouraging as many people as possible to file for unemployment.
So what was the MRA's response after identifying, okay, there are going to be a number of people who have to go on this unemployment? What was it that MRA was going to do?
So, you know, a lot of times we have to be the conduit of information to government officials. And then one of the other things we do, and Kerry referenced this earlier, was we made the decision to put as much information out as possible daily. So all the information that we were getting, we went to a daily alert, and it was fact-based and solely driven, so it's easy to read for operators that were in the middle of shutting down their operations, and just make everything fact-based and easy to read.
So, Kerry or Steve, I've heard about something called the Restaurant Strong Fund. Can you talk a little bit about that, what that is and what it's doing?
Sure. So one of the things you learn about the restaurant industry whenever there's a crisis is how resilient and creative they are. So we knew within the course of 72 hours that there was going to be a huge displacement of employees, and the association started to get lit up by very well-intended folks that wanted to do GoFundMe pages, right? What can we do to help the restaurant industry? What can we do to help the displaced employees of the restaurant industry? And we looked up, and within the course of a week, we were displacing 60% of our staff. And Greg Hill, the morning DJ at WEI, had started the restaurant fund right after the marathon bombings to support the restaurants that got hurt down there, and he had it dialed in. They were taking in donations. Jim Cook from Sam Adams had thrown $100,000 against it already. He ended up putting $2 million against it over the course of the period, but it was funded. Aaron Lynch, their managing director, was awesome. And so they had it dialed in, and I called Aaron on the phone. I said, how do we participate? And we immediately created this incredible partnership where we've started pushing it out through all our social media channels. We asked all of our business partners to push it out through their social media channels. And we've just got incredible partners on our end that support us the direction we go in. Immediately, the leadership from Horizon Beverage put a huge chunk against the fund. Martinetti, right behind them, put another huge chunk. The Glen Restaurant Hospitality Group out of Boston, a restaurant group who's displacing their employees, put a huge chunk of money in this. And in the course of the first 2 weeks we were involved with it, we had $120,000 worth of donations just from those three folks. Not to mention all the other donations that were coming in at that point in time. So within the course of the week, we had another $121,000 checks that went out to displaced hourly employees in Massachusetts in the industry.
That's amazing.
It's a credit to our partnership. It's a credit to our ability to react quickly to a problem and get some resolution out on the street, meaningful resolution out to the street to the folks that didn't have a job, wasn't sure what's going to happen to them. And we're thinking about it, even though they got the extra $600 in a check, they didn't know when the next job was going to come and was going to come, and that extra $1,000 is actually meaningful. It was unbelievable when we did and we'll get this, I'm sure, when we did the telethon, we had all of these recipient testimonials, and how meaningful it was to keep the kids in school, to help pay the rent, to do the things that we naturally think is just going to automatically happen. That $1,000 was an incredible lift to help to get them the other side.
So you said a little, you made a little hint of the telethon. Is that the first night live? Is that the other term for what you did there with telethon?
Yes, we pulled together a 2-hour telethon. We aired it on Sunday, May 17th. The people at Trade Restaurant, Jody Adams, Eric Papacristo, opened up Trade Restaurant, which is a beautiful place right down the seaport, for us to film the live aspects of it. Anna Rossi from NBC 10 was our hostess. She was awesome. Greg Hill and Bob Luz were social distancing in the back on the live end of it. In the course of an hour, we raised 110,000, 2 hours, I'm sorry. In the course of 2 hours, we raised another $110,000 for the restaurant. And we had these, I mean, there's a laundry list of sponsors that jumped in, and within the course, we put this together in 3 weeks. And then within the course of 3 weeks, they stepped up to the plate, they stroked checks.
Hey, Steve, why don't you tell us what we're looking at here?
So you're looking at the Boston restaurant community, Massachusetts restaurant community at large, stepping up in a time of need. And every single person here that's featured on this sheet, and this is only the first page. This went on for 5 pages, as I recall, were involved in this production, whether it was a pre-recorded video or a cooking demonstration from their home. You know, it was really unbelievable to be able to pull this off in the way it was done in the COVID time where we can't get together. And from the viewer at home, of which I was one of them, you wouldn't even believe that this was done, you know, online in 3 weeks, as Kerry says. And you know, everyone featured just did a great job and provided real encouragement for people at home and a really good message, and just really worked together to bring this in. And this is, as Kerry said, this is what the industry does. They protect each other and they look out for their own. And it was just really great to see so many, you know, national celebrities and local celebrities come together for a great cause.
Tell me some of the personalities that were there and some of the memorable things that were happening during this telethon. How about on this first page as you look at the personalities there?
Well, I mean, if you look dead center, that's Chef Robert Irvine. Chef Robert Irvine from Restaurant Impossible. He's a gentleman that was at our, this is the restaurant industry. He was 4 years ago, he was a keynote at our food show. I pinged him and asked him if he'd participate, and he said, of course I will. You know, Ming Tsai did a cooking demo, and Ming Tsai is as big as it gets in the Northeast. And if you go through the laundry list of people, if you want to flip down,
yeah.
Tiffany Faison, top chef winner. Jim Cook. I mean, Jim Cook's the guy that, you know, Sam Adams, $2 million. I mean, Steve, who else you seeing in here that I mean, look at the sports stars.
Doug Williams from MIDA, just an incredible list of people that you know, all gave time. And again, they're probably going through the most stressful time as business operators that they've ever had. Is, you know, many of them wondering, am I going to be able to reopen my location? Am I going to be able to you know, go back to what I had before?
I can't speak strongly enough about the community that we've got, and they're willing, especially through these last 3 months, and their willingness to step up to the plate and do the right thing. And they're going through the same thing everybody else is going through.
Now, what are we looking at here?
So this is us in the back room. So this is, so we had to socially distance. So Anna Rossi's up front of the trade, and this is Greg. I think he's kicking it off there. But again, Bob Luz and I were socially distanced from the rest of the gang, with Greg out in the back, and Anna Rossi and the NBC 10 folks were up front. So it's the back of the trade restaurant. Mr. Luz doing the thing. Mr. Hill approvingly watching him in the background.
That's awesome.
All of this went to support the employees.
So $110,000 went immediately over to Aaron Lynch at the fund, and these guys don't wait around. Once the money hits the bank account, here's the challenge, and this is why we wish we could do more. They had 15,000 applications for relief.
So the next project that it looks like you were involved in was the Market Basket gift cards. Can you tell us about that?
I mean, again, Doug Epstein from Horizon Beverage, from the family that owns and runs Horizon Beverages, which is one of the biggest liquor houses in the state of Massachusetts. He called us up and he said, listen, I've got an idea. And we went, okay, what is it? He goes, I want to put, and I won't use the number, but X number of thousands of dollars against buying $100 Market Basket gift cards for displaced employees. And they put hundreds of $100 gift cards directly to the home address of people that were out of work. And we got this incredible, you know, when you're doing it, you don't think how much $100 can mean to somebody that's out of place. So we got the feedback of people that was a make or break. Interestingly enough, Martinetti and Horizon are the two biggest liquor players in Massachusetts, and you'd think that they'd be, I'm sure, competitive, but you think that they would be, there's no walls. Because when Neil Fisher, who's just down from Carmen and Carl, from running the company, heard about the program, he called me up and he said, how do I get involved? This sounds like just an awesome thing. How do I get involved? And he threw, I'll tell you again, I won't tell you the number, but it was huge against getting another tranche of gift cards out. And Suburban Supply Company up in the North Shore, small company, they heard about it and they called up and said, how do we get involved? So not as large of a chunk, but this past week we got a check in from them, and we're in the process of putting another tranche of $100 gift cards out to people that have been displaced. So you think about what the people that we deal with in this industry and where their heart and head's at. I mean, they're all facing the same thing. I mean, nobody's selling liquor, so it's not like they're making a big revenue stream. But they go into their pocketbooks and they put their money where their mouth is, and they take care of the folks that took care of them.
So let's talk a little bit about what the MRA has been doing to help the professionals, the restaurateurs, and the restaurant businesses themselves survive and thrive through this pandemic.
So right away, as we start talking about restaurants getting shut down, there was concern that restaurants would not be considered essential services, and restaurants are. 54% of the food dollars spent. 54% of the food dollars spent away from home, and so restaurants aren't just a luxury for people, but it's a necessity for families. So the first was to make sure that restaurants remained essential and were allowed to reopen, and then as we moved into the process, there's a number of things that pop up through regulation that need to be addressed as you're going through this type of crisis. And then we believe they'll be announcing tomorrow a deal which is basically going to allow every restaurant operator in the state to take their so-called bad debt, their debt from January through March, and pay it back to the company's interest-free over a 12-month period.
Now, when they reopen for doing delivery and takeout, I understand that a lot of the restaurants rely on these third-party delivery services to provide that delivery of the food. Was that an issue that was cutting into the profit for these restaurants that were already struggling so much?
So that's been a concern, and a number of communities around Massachusetts introduced third-party delivery caps. Or ordinances to be discussed. Boston, Newton, Cambridge, Arlington, Lowell, I think Worcester's considering it. And statewide legislation has passed the Senate passed the House and will most likely pass the Senate in the next couple of days, capping those commission rates during the COVID crisis.
For either Steve or Kerry, what do you see as the future direction with the MRA?
So I think we've learned that we have to be the resource of the minute right now, but with a really strong look at what's going to be happening the week ahead, the next month ahead, the next quarter ahead.
So just one thing I would add, we've come together with a reopen guide for the industry, and it's a step-by-step process for every operator of what they need to do, whether it's requirements from the government, requirements from local, and then best practices, and then it incorporates a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about, a lot of the information that we have at an arm's length away. And it basically takes you from beginning to reopen to being open, and it's about 7 pages. It probably has 45 links in it to different webinars and different guidances, different best practices, and we released that to the industry, I think, about 10 days ago.
Sounds like an important document to get out there.
You can download it on our webpage at any point in time. So we recommend that people dive into it on a weekly basis and get a new one.
I want to thank you, and I think you're an inspiration. And if we know that 4 people can do it, you can imagine that together we can all win. We can combine our resources and all work together. So I appreciate everything. Hopefully you're an inspiration to other people, that they see the work and the commitment and the dedication that you've made to helping this industry survive. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Hey, Mark and John, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.